pretty crazy.
That's shit.
So anyways, sorry. Okay, going back to the fear-shame dynamic. Our limbic brain, right? So the brain that fully develops at the age of 3. So like this limbic brain is fully developed by the age of 3, and this limbic brain is just to give alarms. It's just to send out an alarm. And so like why this is because like toddlers aren't able to take care of themselves, but they do need to notify their caregivers to be like, yo, I'm not being taken care of. Like, you need to take care of me. So I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna get very angry. I'm gonna tell you what's wrong so that you can take care of me, because I don't know how to self-regulate myself, because I can't separate myself from what's being experienced. Because they don't have that higher prefrontal cortex thinking, and that's why you need to be raised by a tribe, by like caregivers, right? Because you can't take care of yourself. And so our prefrontal cortex doesn't fully develop till the age of 30, but our limbic system, our reptilian brain, the flight or fight brain, fully develops by the age of 3. And so we have like 27 years where we need to figure out how to cope with life. But our brain is tailored to thinking limbically, to just letting out an alarm. And that fear-shame dynamic comes from that brain. It's just an alarm system. And so I like to literally picture it as a fire alarm in our brain. And that's the loudest alarm that we hear. So if you have a shame core vulnerability, that's why it's the core vulnerability, because it's the loudest alarm. And so like, if you experience shame, if your partner experiences fear, and if you're unaware of these alarms being played off in your head, you might choose to blame the other person for the way that you feel. And this is called emotional relationship dynamics. And so what emotional relationship dynamics is where the fear-shame gets triggered in a couple, and they blame each other for it, and they play these roles. And it's so weird, dude. Like, learning about this after being in a relationship with someone for like many years, like I started to understand all of my patterns of like the resentment and like anger that I had like towards my partner. Like all of this was triggered by like a limbic alarm, and I wasn't able to self-regulate because I was using tactics of coping like a toddler, because I didn't understand how to separate myself from the situation. Because when I was experiencing shame, I would agree with that. So like shame is saying, yo, you're not good enough. And then I would be like, you know what? You're right. I'm not good enough. Now I'm going to get angry at myself, because when I'm angry at myself, it temporarily gives me a stimulation in the brain similar to like taking a stimulant. So like it's literally taking drugs. So when you're angry, your brain is in a hyperactive state of hyperarousal, and you temporarily feel less shitty. So that's why people get angry. Like, people don't get angry because they're like, because they really want to cause harm to other people.
Yeah.
I really feel that all anger is an embodiment of the Luciferian archetype. And the Luciferian archetype, right? Like, Lucifer fucking really hurt by God, right? And then he got really angry. So, like, that what that story is to me is not a story about an actual dude named Lucifer, but what that means is that like all the stories in the Bible are just describing Homo sapien interactions, and they have to do it through through the lens of like talking from person to person, because that's how we tell stories as Homo sapiens, right? Like when we went to Vegas, if I'm telling that story, I'd be like, Elijah, Kat, Kaylin, and I were in Las Vegas, and we did these things, and this is how we interacted. And so, like, when people were passing down information of, like, Homo sapien interaction, you couldn't do it through a crazy metaphorical lens that most people wouldn't understand, because most people aren't even literate, right? And so you'd have to tell these stories as stories, because it was the only way to get the message across to the most amount of people. You couldn't be like, you would tell a story about Lucifer and God, not being like, yo, when you feel very vulnerable, you tend to emotionally project because in your brain, the chemistry in your brain temporarily makes you feel less vulnerable, so you're not eaten. Like, that would be pretty difficult to get across to someone that doesn't even know how to read or even understand most fictitious concepts, right? So, like, they had to be told through stories. And so, what's crazy is, like, fear and shame, they trigger one another, which is crazy. And so, like, this is why it was the most important lesson that I learned in my life. So, like, if you're experiencing shame, that will trigger your partner's experience of fear, and then that will even trigger you more. So, for example, if a male or someone with the shame vulnerability is driving down the road, and they're driving faster than the person with fear would like, the person with fear is just hearing an alarm in their head, being like, I'm gonna die because we're driving too fast, right? Because, like, that's your loudest alarm, is like of being afraid, being like feeling not safe. And if that person mentions that to the driver that has a shame complex will automatically hear, you are incompetent at driving. Like, you're not a good driver. And it has nothing, like, her alarm just got triggered, and then she mentioned something, and then your alarm got triggered. But this is like your limbic signal, right? Like, it's not existing in reality. It's just that you guys were both triggered. Like, her fear, your shame. And so if that person mentions, yo, you're driving too fast, the person that feels shame because he's feeling inadequate, right? They might get angry, because anger is a stimulatory effect, and when you're angry, you temporarily don't feel so shitty. And so if you were triggered by feeling like an incompetent driver, you would get angry so you don't feel so vulnerable about that. But because you get angry, that person's fear is now triggered, right? Because all she was doing was saying, hey, I'm afraid at the speed that we're going. I feel unsafe. And then if that was the response to that, then she would feel afraid of, this person doesn't care about my mental state within the relationship. You know what I mean? And so, like, and then her feeling like that, being like, well, I don't feel like you care about me, right? That triggers the dude shame even more, because he already feels like he's incompetent at being in a relationship with someone. And then when they say that, it's another reflection of that. And so that's what emotional relationship dynamics are, is when, like, fear and shame are triggered unknowingly, and then the other people blame each other for it. And so, like, that was most of the problems in my relationship with Kaylin. Is like, I was getting triggered. I didn't know how to self-regulate. And so I would blame other people because I didn't want to feel so shitty, right? And so, like, when I've been mentioning, like, embracing vulnerability, that's the biggest thing that's helped me, because, like, embracing feeling shame, being like, I feel this way, it's just a signal in my head, and I don't need to validate it. I don't need to agree with it. And, like, when you're triggered, cortisol is released, and cortisol is the stress chemical. And when the stress chemical is released, it temporarily diverts blood flow from your prefrontal cortex to your amygdala, which is your flight or fight response, with your limbic brain. And so when you get triggered, if you feel shame, or if a woman feels fear, if they're in a hyper state of arousal, your brain will direct blood flow to your prefrontal cortex, which is the flight or fight, because that's what keeps us alive. Like, if we didn't have that flight or fight, we would be dead. And so, like, it takes higher processing priority over everything, because it's the thing that literally keeps us walking on this planet. And so it makes sense. However, we live in a society where we're not necessarily put in situations where we need to actually use fight or flight to survive, right? But we're all still triggered. We're all still feeling these same signals, and then we're blaming our reality for receiving these signals, because we don't know how to self-regulate, right? And it's like, it's just easier to get angry at things than it is to try to take yourself outside of the situation, see it for what it truly is, and then react to it within a value framework. But if you're just constantly being reactionary in your life, you don't live by a value framework, because you're just trying to avoid feeling vulnerable. And so, like, it's only through embracing vulnerability and taking accountability for your actions and, like, trying to be like, well, how do I want to live? Like, what do I actually want to be doing? It normally doesn't align with, like, being reactionary and hurting other people, right? And so, like... Yeah. And so, it's crazy, man. Like, but yeah, dude, the fear-shame dynamic, it's nuts. So, like, if you can understand that, you'd be like, I have shame. I'm developing a relationship with these signals of shame, and I'm going to put myself in situations where I get this feedback because I don't need to agree with it. Oh, I was mentioning cortisol because, like, cortisol temporarily directs blood flow from your prefrontal cortex to your amygdala, but that turns off your brain for, like, 30 minutes. Like, 30 minutes, your brain is just in complete fight or flight response. And so if you're triggered, if you feel shame, if you get angry, you need to understand that, yo, bro, cortisol is being released, and you know when you're stressed. Like, you feel it. Like, you know. And so, like, what I've been telling myself is, like, I feel cortisol. I'm noting what it is, because, like, cortisol is just a stress chemical. And for, like, up to 30 minutes, I'm not going to be in my right mind. So all the thoughts that I'm having in my head shouldn't be validated because they're coming from a place where my blood flow is being in complete flight or fight. And, like, when it's in complete flight or fight, it's not able to observe any other person's experience when I'm just being triggered in the flight or fight response, right? Because, like, everything is happening to you in that moment. Like, you're not concerned with, like, how the other person's thinking or, like, what the other person's thinking. You're literally just trying to fight or, like, go away from them. And so, like, when you're stressed, when you're vulnerable, like, you need to understand that your brain is not going to be working correctly for, like, upwards of 30 minutes, and you should just cease the conversation because it's not going to be beneficial to either of you. So you just be like, yo, we're triggered. Like, this is a thing. Like, you're afraid. Triggered. I feel shame. Yeah, dude, it's like, it's literally, it's just like, we're hearing alarms in our head that have nothing to do with each other, and we care about each other. So, like, let's just be here for, like, the next little bit and, like, help each other out because, like, this sucks. And we're both experiencing this really shitty feeling. And, like, before I understood the fear-shame dynamic, I never gave that opportunity to, like, my partner because I was always just angry at them, right? Because it's easier to be angry because then you feel less vulnerable. And so that was the one of the biggest causes of my relationship. The biggest problem was I was triggered. She was triggered. We both didn't know how to self-regulate, and we blamed each other for it. And, like, Kaylin and I didn't have, like, an awful relationship. Like, we were really good communicators, and we didn't, like, fight a whole lot. Like, I don't think we ever made, like, other people uncomfortable. Well, we probably did, honestly. But, like, it wasn't, like, there's a lot worse frameworks to, like, exist in a relationship. And, like, Kaylin and I had our problems for sure, and a lot of it was being triggered and, like, blaming each other, and, like, that yields resentment, and, like, we weren't kind, and so, like, it's gonna cause a lot of problems. But most people aren't, like, ever aware of that dynamic, and it sucks because, like, you could like hate someone that you live with for decades and not know that you actually don't hate them, that you're just both triggered and you don't know how to self-regulate, and, like, it's really sad, honestly.
Shit.
Yeah. But yeah, man, ever since I learned that, dude, it's fucking nuts. So that's what I make, like, podcasts and stuff about. Like, all I'm trying to do is, like, learn how to self-regulate myself. And all the tools that I've learned, I'd want to just, like, share that with people. Because, like, if I would have known these things earlier, like, I may have not spent so much time being just limbically reactive. Because, like, it sucks to just, like, limbically react, dude. You feel like shit all the time. Like, it's not fun. It's not a good place to be.
I get that. I feel that.
Yeah.
It's sick.
But yeah, dude, fuck, man. God, we haven't seen each other for a grip, dude. I'm like, dude, like, from...
Dude, I know.
A year and a half ago, I'm a completely different person. Like, it's weird, man. It's weird. But I'm honestly happier than I've ever been in my life. And it's because I've learned a few lessons. I've learned to, like, maintain things in my life. And, like, I've chose to let go of some things that were kind of, like, holding me back.
You're hanging on to.
Yeah, dude, I was hanging on to a lot of stuff. And, like, I could have been a millionaire right now, man. I had 22 Bitcoin.
What? Did you sell it all?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, bro.
Why'd you sell it all?
It was like, it was at a time where like Bitcoin was going from like $230 to $300, and then it would go back down to $230. So I sold that at $300. It went up to like $750. I didn't have the self-worth to like buy back in, and then Kaylin and I were like rocky in our relationship, so we decided to move to California. So I decided to use money for those funds instead. And it was all due to the fact that I didn't know how to self-regulate. And like, honestly, like looking back on it,
I think about that all the time. I remember when you told me to invest in Bitcoin. I was like, okay. Yeah. And I never did.
Yeah, dude. If you just put $300 aside, you'd have like $40K right now.
Yeah.
It'd be crazy.
Fucking gay. Sucks.
So I felt a lot of shame about that.
Cryptocurrency?
I am. I invested a little bit into XRP, and I have been like.
Okay.
I haven't been buying anything recently because I've been more focused on like investing in my projects, but also I haven't had very much money.
Yeah.
And so I've just been like trying to maintain my monthly bills.
Totally fine.
But what I would like to do is I want to just like do the Mormon diet thing with it. Is like I would like to just put aside 10% of my income to investments and just like not think about it.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Because like it's a good thing. 10% of your money, dude, that's a lot, bro. And like if you diversify, if you diversify like your portfolio, like I think that would be just golden.
Oh, that's the best thing you can do. Honestly, it's super smart.
So that's what I'm gonna do once the money starts coming back in. But as of yet, I've just been I actually have amassed a lot of things that I need to create content, which I've been pretty stoked about, and I'm pretty set up for success as far as like
content creation is so fun. It is extremely difficult.
It is
extremely
hard.
difficult and time consuming.
Yeah.
But it's like rewarding as hell, especially when it takes off. But I mean, like I said, it's so difficult. Yeah. But I love it. I mean, I stream.
Yeah.
But it's
That's
just
cool, dude.
It's tough. Especially if you don't set aside time, then you fall behind and you feel like yourself, you feel like, fuck, like I'm not doing what I thought I was, or you kind of get down on yourself, but it's still, you can't like give up, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, you definitely can't. Like it's really all, it's just about like continuing pushing on. And like what I found out is like, if I judge my success only based off of me showing up and trying, like that's all you can control. And like when you do that, you never set yourself up to expect anything. And when you don't expect anything out of your environment, you're never upset, right? Because like expectation yields like unhappiness. Like if I expect like if I post this thing, like I'm gonna get a certain amount of views and shit, and like when you do that, you make an agreement with yourself that you're not gonna be content if that action doesn't manifest, right? And so like so like the only thing you can do is be like, if I show up to the table and try to do something today rather than nothing, that's a fucking win. And if I continue to do that over linear time, it's just a numbers game. And if it never works out, I'm still going to be content because I'm only judging my success based off trying. And like that's literally the only thing you can do is try. And like what people don't understand is like every single thing that people are talented at, like Adele, like she's a singer, right? She's super talented singer. Like Adele didn't just like pop out of the womb and start singing Hello, you know? Like it took a lot of time. Like every single thing in this reality starts at infancy. And so if you can understand that, being like, yo, dude, everything starts in infancy. Like even PewDiePie didn't know how to stream before he started streaming, right? Like everything starts out in infancy. And so what I like to think is like, if I'm attempting to do a new thing, I'm going to be an infant at it. Like I'm going to be bare bones, like just starting fresh, right? And like my success is going to be based upon me showing up to the table and trying, but it's also going to be me developing a relationship with that process, right? So like if you've never done anything before, you need to develop a relationship with that process. And when you're developing a relationship with something, you're going to fail because like that's the only way we learn. Like if you didn't fuck up, you wouldn't be like, oh well, I need to avoid fucking up again. Wrong. Exactly. And so like what I like to tell myself is like, I'm just developing a relationship with the process. So even if I fall short of my expectations or like where I want to be, that's okay because I'm going to need to do this to get to where I want to be. And so, like, it really kind of, like, it's really important to tell yourself that, because our brains are really interesting. Like, we can't value what we're doing and devalue it simultaneously. And so whatever you tell yourself, it can either be through a framework of I value what's happening, or it can be through a framework of I do not value what's happening. And so when I'm doing something new, when I tell myself I'm developing a relationship with this process, that's coming from a mind state of like, I'm valuing what I'm doing, because like whatever I'm doing is important. And like, even if I don't get to where I want to be, that's okay, because I'm still attempting to do something. Whereas if I were to try to learn how to skateboard, right, and if I didn't like land a kickflip or something, if I was like tell myself I'm a fuck up and I need to like continue doing it so I can be better, it's still the same. You're still doing the same thing because you're continuing to try, right? You're continuing to get up on that skateboard and continue to try to kickflip, but you're doing it from a state where you're devaluing yourself. Whereas if you're like, I'm not landing these kickflips right now, and that's okay because I'm developing a relationship with the process, you're doing that from a state of mind that's valuing the situation. And it's going to be a completely different experience to you trying to learn that kickflip. And it's really important. So like, you can't value and devalue simultaneously. So it's like really important to know that. So like, anytime you're thinking of like things in a mind state that's not productive, because like being negative about a situation isn't really being productive about it, right? It's just like, you're just literally wishing, you're wishful thinking. You're like, I wish things weren't the way that they were, but they are. And so like, you need to act within a value framework to make that the best situation possible, because you can't just like change like outcomes of a situation if you don't do anything. You can't just like wish it to not be there. Like, you have to actually interact with it. You have to take accountability and like, try to figure it out in the best way possible for everyone, right? Because like, if you don't try to do that, then you don't play the game well, and you're not going to be invited to like it, like to like work with people or to like be a part of a community, because you don't go into it with the mindset of like, what's the best way to handle this for everyone. Like, you're just thinking about yourself, and like, people know that, and like, people will not want to interact with you in the future because they know you're coming at situations from a very selfish point of view. And like, people want to cooperate with people, but they don't want to be told what to do. And so if you go into situations trying to tell people what to do and like not trying to cooperate with them, like, you're not gonna have very many good interactions with people in your life. But yeah, it's weird, dude. Life is crazy, man. But there's been a lot of really good things I've been learning the past like year and a half, dude. And I've been getting after a lot of fun stuff. And honestly, like, dude, if I died tomorrow, like, I'd be really happy with where I'm at in my life. And
that's
like,
good.
That's
where you need to be.
Yeah, it's really cool, man. It's literally just as simple as like appreciating the moment. Like, appreciating just like what you're doing, and like, because like literally nothing matters, dude. Like, nothing matters. Like, if we're gonna die, like, the world's gonna go on. Like, what really matters is like being present, acting on what's meaningful to you in this moment, and like being like loving the people around you and like trying to do the same thing for them. Because like, it doesn't matter what situation we're given. Like, if we're not doing those things, like, we're not really gonna appreciate our life, in my mind. Yeah. But it's weird, man.
Dope.
It's pretty crazy. And like, most everyone is unfortunately trapped in that limbic reactive part of your brain. They did this study where they took like 20 different people and they put them in a room and they had them fill out this long form. And it was just like tedious, like red tape paperwork type shit, right? And one person in the room was in on the test, and they were supposed to start subconsciously, or like start acting like frustrated with filling out this long form, right? And so, like, they were, like, ruffling through the pages or, like, maybe, like, tapping on their desk. But it wasn't, like, super obvious that, like, people would be like, yo, you're pissed off, bro. Like, what's going on, right? It was just, like, it was, like, unconscious in a sense. But they were doing it consciously, obviously. But it wasn't, like, they weren't trying to make a scene. And after the test, like, 40 to 60% of the people around this person started doing the same behavior unconsciously. And then after the test was done, they talked to these people that were inhibiting the same behaviors as this other person was. And they were like, hey, man, like, what's wrong? Were you frustrated taking the test? And these people were like, no, what do you mean? Like, I wasn't frustrated at all. I was just filling out this form, right? And they're like, well, we videotaped everyone filling out the test and, like, look at your reaction. And 60% of the people around the person that was in trying to act frustrated also started inhibiting behaviors of being frustrated. 60%. That's half. That is half.
That's nuts.
So, if that's the case, most interactions that we have in general are completely reactionary. Not done from a mindset of intent. Not done through a value framework. It's solely just reacting limbically to our environment. 60% of the people around this person started inhibiting the same frustrating behaviors. And, like, why we have this, it's actually really important to our survival. So, like, when we were hunter-gatherers, we needed to have multiple eyes and ears on one situation. Because we were hunting. That's why video games are so fun, because it hits those same receptor sites in the brain. It's multiple people focused on one thing, and it's really important. Because if we didn't do that,
trying to win too, yeah,
we would not have been able to survive. If we didn't communally work to hunt our prey and get food for our tribe, we would die. And so it's like one of the most rewarding things you could possibly do is work collectively with a group of people attempting to do one thing. It gives you a lot of really good feedback. And so the multiple eyes and ears is important. And so that's why most of these people were inhibiting the same behaviors, right? They were frustrated. That person was frustrated. They were frustrated. Because we need to mimic and match each other's energy to survive. But in, like, the day-to-day, it doesn't really serve you well to be frustrated taking exams, right? Like, it doesn't really do you any good. But you're still getting these signals that are extremely important if you understand why they're there and why we have them. And so, like, I think the best thing to do to try to be sane in this world that we live in is, like, try to look at a homo sapien through the lens of any other animal that you observe in zoology. Like, we're programmed, bro. Like, how a dog acts, we should look at people and be like, this is how fucking people act. Like, people are tribal. People, like, women and women have two different core vulnerabilities because they have different neurochemicals that, like, run the show. Just like the same way that we described any other animal in zoology. Like, we do the same thing. Like, humans aren't that complex. We're actually pretty programmable if you kind of look at us on, like, an average. And it's really fucking funny, dude, because, like, most people think that, like, this world is so crazy complex. And, like, how could we ever figure this out? And, like, life is just so overwhelming. And it's like, dude, are you doing what a human is supposed to be fucking doing? No! Like, are you getting proper sleep? Are you taking care of your health? Are you social? Like, do you see progress in your life? Like, that's what Homo sapiens need to do to feel a fulfilled life. Just like how a dog does his shit and it feels fulfilled, right? So it's like, we are just Homo sapiens. Like, we're just encaptured in this vessel, and we experience all of the feedback because we're a Homo sapien. If we were a dog, we would feel and experience all the feedback of being a dog, and we'd have dog problems, and we'd have, like, fucking, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like, we're just humans. And so it's like, I think it really is just that simple. If we were to observe ourselves just like we'd observe a dog or a cat or, like, any other animal, like, we're pretty programmable. We should be meeting the marks of, like, what we do to be people. And if we're not actively always trying to do that, then we can't just be a victim about our situation, right? Like, you need to take personal agency somewhere along that line. And, like, once you do that, then your life is yours. Like, you're no longer held by other people pushing you down because you know that your situation is based off what you put effort into. And it doesn't mean that like some people aren't naturally like gifted with like more opportunities than you are, but it means that like your reality is dictated based upon.
Sam, hang on 1 second. Hey, sorry, I guess I had someone at the door.
No, you're good, dude.
Oh, hang on, I gotta go check something real quick.
Hella.
Yes, our water heater's leaking.
Is that what that person came to tell you?
And it's leaking. I gotta get all that shit out of storage right now. You hear me?
Oh, you said your water heater is leaking and you need to get stuff out of storage?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'm sorry to hear that, bro.
No worries. I'll definitely catch up, though. We need to catch up more, so...
Dude, I really like... I ended up, like, recording, like, some of this conversation. Would you mind if I use that for some content? I didn't go live with it or anything, but I just wanted to ask you.
Oh, no, of course. Go ahead.
Cool, man. Well, dude, I appreciate it. Good luck with that. I'm sorry that happened.
All right, man. No, don't worry about it.
Cool. I'd love to talk more, though.
Love you, fam.
Love you, fam.
All right, man.
Bye.
Talk to you later. Bye.